Hello, welcome to the Manasplained podcast. I'm Connor, and today I'll be talking about the deck I built for Jerrard of the Closed Fist. So in the previous video, I said that Jasmine Boreal is the worst commander ever printed, and I stand by that because she was a 5 mana 4/5. Jerrard of the Closed Fist is a 6 mana 6/5. At least his power meets his mana you pay for. He's trash. He's also bad. He's less bad than Jasmine because Jerrard has 2 creature types as well, human and knight. And so because he has 2 creature types and Gruul is kind of the stompy, attacky colors, I decided to make a knight tribal deck, which I wasn't sure what I was getting into going into it, but it turns out green and red has a bunch of very cool knights and a bunch of very synergistic ones. So I can't wait to get into the deck and show you what cards I was able to find while throwing this deck together. And after I upload the Jasmine Boreal video, I hit over 100 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for subscribing and watching my videos. It really means a lot. I just wanted to say thank you. This is kind of like a dream come true for me. I'm slowly getting there, and it's thanks to you guys. I really hope someday to really foster a great community where everyone builds decks in the comments, and maybe at some point I'll put a Discord server together for people. Yeah, I'm really excited to get there at some point. So again, just thank you so much. So for the deck breakdown, 24 theme cards, 8 pump cards, 3 synergy, 0 protection, and 5 anthem. The 24 theme cards plus the commander gets you to 25 knights in the deck. I feel like that's a good solid number. Maybe you would want it closer to 30, 35, but I needed room for other cards in the deck, which I'll get to in a minute. The pump and the anthem cards are because Jerrad's a 6/5. You want to get him over to get him 7 or higher so that you could get the 3-hit or the 2-hit kill with commander damage. And also, since you're an attacking deck, pump effects for your knights and anthem effects for all of your attacking knights are just a good idea. The 3 synergy cards, but I'll get into what those are later. And then 0 protection cards because you don't need to protect your commander in this deck because that's not what the deck's about. You could go for some larger group protection cards like a heroic intervention. Problem with that card's very expensive, and I didn't feel like running a card that expensive. I wish that card was reprinted into the ground so that it could be a $5 to $10 card instead of a $15 to $20 card. I'm not sure what the price is now, but the last time I checked it was pretty expensive, and I just wish that card was more accessible to more people. For the last categories, 10 draw, 15 ramp, 10 removal, 36 lands. This is why I wasn't able to run as many knights. I wanted a good amount of ramp in the deck so that you have your mana to be able to get out all of your anthem effects, pump effects, creatures, and be able to get them out quickly, and so you can start swinging out. There's quite a bit of card draw that's very repeatable in this deck as well, so having all that ramp is going to be enabled by the card draw, which is great. And then 10 removal. I found 2 new removal cards which I knew of at one point, but I guess I forgot about. But now in my green and red or just green decks, I'm definitely going to run these removal spells all the time because they are so good, and I'll go over them later. Again, no board wipes. I probably should be running a board wipe that can deal with artifacts and enchantments, but play removal is the best kind of removal. So if you just keep swinging face with all of your knights, why would you ever need artifact or enchantment removal? All this leads to 11 crossover cards. This is the first deck in a while that's had 10 or more ramp, 10 or more removal, 10 or more card draw, and 10 or more crossover cards. When these numbers came together, it made me so happy. I didn't really have to fudge the numbers either. All the cards just naturally fit into multiple categories, and I managed to naturally get the numbers up. It's great. I'm so happy with this result. Oh, it's awesome. So the theme is all the knights, and I'll run through them. Some knights are cooler than others, and I was surprised that some cards end up being knights. It means they have double synergy in this deck because they do one thing, and then end up being a knight as well, which is just great. So these are the first group of knights. They all have flanking or synergize with flanking. So the way flanking works is whenever it's blocked, the blocking creature gets -1/-1. The reason that's actually pretty effective is chump blocks become a lot harder. If the creature has 1 power, they drop to 0 power, so they deal no damage to your creature. If they have 1 toughness, this will literally kill that creature, even if it has indestructible, which is also crazy. And then Tor gives all of your flanking creatures that attack +1/+1 till the end of turn, which is kind of nuts. So all these cards they synergize with Tor, which is great, and then they also synergize with pump effects and anthem effects because chump blocks just don't work. You would want these cards to get trample, which I do have a couple trample givers in the deck. That way they can't be chump blocked, plus they have trample, so people are really gonna have to commit to stop these guys. These are the two knights that draw cards in the deck. Cavalier of Flame, when it enters the battlefield, can replace your hand, which is great. And then when it dies, you get to deal damage to each opponent and each planeswalker they control, where X is the number of land cards in your graveyard. Also great. So it can just deal some damage when you attack with it, and then when it leaves eventually. Also, you can pay 2 mana to give your entire board +1/+0 and haste until the end of turn. Like, Cavalier of Flame is awesome. It does so many things. And Sarkara the Bold, she's fantastic. So whenever she or an instant or sorcery deals damage to a player, you get to exile the top card of your library and you can play it until the end of turn. So that's great because it can help you hit your land drops. It can help just churn through your deck faster, finding cards you need. And if you end up exiling a card that's too expensive, maybe like you could have been close to casting it, but say it's like a 10 drop and you only have 6 mana because you played Sarkara, and then on your next turn you're activating her. That's basically a dead draw you just got rid of, which is fantastic. So yeah, I think both these cards are great. Having draw on creatures is exactly what this deck wants, because you're not losing tempo by spending your mana on card draw. You're spending your mana on drawing cards and presenting a threat on board. And then these are the knights that give abilities to other creatures. So Blood Crusher gives all of your creatures trample, 4 mana for 3/3, everything tramples, fantastic. And then Ogre Errant gives another attacking knight menace until the end of turn. So it's only 1 creature, but menace is great, especially say you give it to a creature with flanking. Oh my god, that'd be so good, because they have to block 2 creatures, both the creatures get -1/-1, fantastic. But Blood Crusher of Khorne here is definitely a better card, and again, just giving everything trample, so good. Trample's an awesome keyword. These are some Anthem and Pump creatures. Fervent Champion, great card in Standard back in the day. Cards kind of ridiculous, especially if you had multiple of them out. They were nuts, and in a knight deck, they're fantastic. They gave all your knights +1/+1 to the end turn, and it's a 1/1 with haste and first strike. And this card's insane. This card's actually insane. One of the cards I was surprised that was a knight is Bortusk Liege, giving all of your red creatures +1/+1 and all of your green creatures +1/+1. So your commander gets +2/+2 from it. And then it's just a +1/+1 for, I don't think there's any other red and green creatures in the deck. I might be wrong on that, but because of that, like, it's just a good Anthem effect, plus it is trample, plus it's a knight. The card is fantastic. Bloodsworn Steward gives your commander +2/+2 in haste. Again, more pump effects and stuff like that. Marton Stromgald, really interesting. He does a bunch of stuff. If you want to read what he does, you can pause and read him. He does a bunch of stuff. Not really important at the moment, but I don't really want to go through him because it's a lot of text, but it's just a good card. And then Sir Farron the Henge Hammer, again, another pump effect. When it attacks, another creature gets +X/+X, where X is Sir Farron's power. So you can put different pump effects onto the stack. So you could pump Farron first with something like a Battle Cry or a Fervent Champion, and then her pump effect can go into another creature. It's great. These cards are fantastic. And Sir Farron being a 2-mana 2/2 that gets this giant boost to another creature. Again, all of these cards are great. Like, knights are so cool. I didn't realize knights were so varied and different abilities and stuff. Like, it's awesome. So all of these cards make tokens. Sword of Valoron and Court of Embereth are the only ones that make knight tokens. Eomer and Riders both make soldier tokens, which is weird. I don't know why they just wouldn't be knights making knights. I don't know why they make soldiers. It's so bizarre. And then Varchild makes survivor tokens for your opponents, but they can't attack you and they can't block. They're only just for your opponents to swing with them. And then if Varchild ever dies, you'll get all those tokens so you can start attacking them with them, which is fantastic. These cards are all great. And then Court of Embereth also has the ability to deal X damage to each opponent, or X the number of creatures you control, if you have the Monarch during your upkeep. And I love the Monarch. I think the Monarch is such an awesome, like, kind of effect to put on a game. One of my favorite variants of Commander, I remember I saw it on Shuffle Up and Play on the Tolarian Community College channel. I think it was Shivam brought it up, and it was oh my god, Monarch in the middle, where the Monarch token starts in the middle of the board. That way, whenever the first player to draw blood gets to become the Monarch, and it speeds up games a lot. And also, it gives a kind of bonus to Boros and red decks, where they're generally worse at drawing cards. And so, having something like Monarch, where these decks are usually a lot more aggressive, giving them abilities to draw a card on the Ren step, just kind of makes the game feel more fun to be in those colors. So yeah, I'm gonna start asking if people want to play Monarch in the middle more, because it just makes the game fun, and it makes people feel less bad about attacking, because like, you should be attacking more. Like, you should be attacking to lower people's life totals, because a lot of decks use life as a resource, and you want games to not last forever. And so by having the Monarch be a thing that exists, people are incentivized to attack, and then you don't feel bad for hitting someone for, air quotes, no reason. Yeah, no, I love Monarch. I love what it does to the game, and I think it's fantastic. And then these are the last 3 knights of the category that didn't really fit with any of the other sections of the theme. Knight Rampager, you can give him to an opponent at random during their turn, and then he attacks. So as you go around the table, Knight Rampager just keeps attacking over and over and over, which is wild. And then when it dies, it deals 4 damage to an opponent chosen at random. Like, Knight Rampager it's crazy. It's actually crazy. Like, wow, it's so insane. Like, was it 24 damage per rotation of the table? If it's not blocked, that's so much damage, and it's only to your opponents. Like, what the hell? Anyways, then Cavalier of Thorns, it's ramp on a knight, and then when it dies, you can exile it, and then you Noxious Revival, return a card from your graveyard to the top of your library. Card's insane. Cavalier of Thorns is so good. Oh my god, it's so good. And then Diamond Knight is just a 3-mana 1/1, and then you choose a color, and then you get to put 1 counters on whenever you cast a spell of the chosen color, which, I mean, I'm pretty sure you're going to pick red in this deck. I think there's way more red cards than green cards. But Diamond Knight is just a 3-mana knight that's going to grow over the course of a game and get pretty big. And also the card art is fantastic. So for the pump effects, I separated the pump and Anthem effects by Anthem just being static effects that are constantly going, while pump effects may have like they have an activation requirement, or if they come out after a creature, they won't affect the creature necessarily, and I'll get into those and what I mean by that now. So these are the 3 pump effects you haven't seen yet. The rest of them are just knights from a previous category. But Rhythm of the Wild I put in pump instead of Anthem, because if it comes out after creatures have already entered, it won't affect them, so it's not really an Anthem in that way. But it's still fantastic, because the creatures you control either enter with a 1/1 counter or have haste, which, depending on the situation, having that modality is fantastic. Also, stopping your creature spells from being countered is fantastic as well. It's a form of protection, but I didn't feel like putting it in the protection category, because I prefer more active protection for stuff like that. Something like a Swiftfoot Boots or something like a Heroic Intervention feels more like a protection category card to me. But depending on the pod you play in, if there's a ton of blue, ton of counterspells flying around, Rhythm of the Wild could be a protection piece. And then Helana and Alena partners, and then Xenagos, they both just give huge power boosts to a creature for a combat, and then and they both give like haste as well. So these cards just absolute monsters. They're so strong, and Helana and Alena isn't just a temporary boost like Xenagos, it's counters, and it's where X is Helena and Alena's power. So all of the other pump effects and Anthem effects can bump them up, and then they can put counters on other creatures, which is permanently making them huge, which is really nice. And then Xenagos is just a house that would turn your commander from a 6/5 into a 12/11. And then you've already seen all these. These are the pump knights, which is great. I think, again, like I said, I think these cards are great. Especially Sir Farron, it works a lot. It's a worse version of Helana and Alena partners, but it doesn't. It's 2 mana instead of 4 mana. And it doesn't put counters, so you do have those trade-offs. But yeah, all of these cards are great. So the synergy category is a little spicy. One of the cards here I'm really excited to actually finally put in the deck. I think I pulled the partner pairing from a set of Battle Bond, and the cards care about 2 different tribes at the same time, which it works in Battle Bond because one player could be playing the one tribe of that deck for Two-Headed Giant, and the other player could be playing the other tribe for the Two-Headed Giant, and then having them both out affects both like your team, and that's very cool. But they don't really work as a partner pairing commander because the tribes don't synergize that well. But in here, it's just a great little synergy card to tack on to give your team a boost. And that card is Korvath Brightflame, giving all of your knights flying and haste. That is insane. It's amazing evasion, and it's haste. It's great. That's so good. Now your knights can attack the turn they enter. It's fantastic. Some other spicy cards in the deck. Bedlam, creatures can't block. I'm putting this card in more decks now because it's hilarious. I love this card. It's so funny. I'm currently building a Marisi Breaker of the Coil Goad deck, which I'm going to have as a personal deck, and I'm so excited for that deck because it's super combat focused. It'll draw a bunch of cards, it'll make your opponents attack each other, only each other, and then Bedlam just makes it so no one can stop any of the damage coming through. It's so good. And then Brimstone Trebuchet is really interesting because there are a bunch of different cards kind of like this that whenever a creature dies, you get to untap it, and you can tap it to deal a damage. Or whenever a creature enters, or whenever you cast an instant or sorcery. But this is for knights. Whenever knights enter, you can untap it and then deal 1 damage to each opponent. So these cards all are just fun little synergy cards that I thought would work really well in this deck. And I'm really happy with these 3 cards. I think they're all fantastic, kind of like off-the-wall kind of choices for a deck like this. Except for Korvath. Korvath is nuts. So for the Anthem category, you might recognize all of these cards. One of these cards I'm very excited to have in the deck because it is so strong. It's so strong, and I'm glad it's relatively cheap. That card being Beastmaster Ascension. This card is ridiculous. If you've attacked with 7 or more creatures this game, while this card is out, your entire board just gets +5/+5. That is so much. Oh my god, that's so much. Especially when you have cards like Vortusk Liege or the Knight from earlier. Cards with trample, giving trample. Like, holy crap. It's so good. 5/5 is like an obscene amount. That if you have 4 creatures out, that's 20 extra damage on board. That's half of somebody's life total. And in a deck like this, having 4 creatures out, not that difficult. +5/+5 also gets your commander to 11, which is a 2-shot from commander damage. And then you have Bedlam out, they can't block, so you just kill them. Like, Beastmaster Ascension is ridiculous. Rising of the Day, giving your creatures haste, and then it only gives the legendary creatures +1/+0, but again, gets your commander 7, that's fantastic. Paragon, not a knight, unfortunately, but you can pay a red and tap it to give another creature haste, while also giving an Anthem effect, fantastic. Domri, just the +1, no toughness boost, which is fine, because you're just trying to attack. And also you can minus it to fight, but you're not going to do that in this deck. This deck isn't going to be doing that as much because you're going to want to keep Domri around for the bump to power, and then also for the ramp, because you can +1 Domri to ramp out your creatures, which is fantastic. I'm very happy about the draw in this deck. It's exactly what I wanted. It's because the commander is in green and has 6 power, you can use your commander as some draw synergy stuff. I'm not running any of the sacrifice draw because this deck is more about keeping creatures on board and attacking with them. And yes, those cards would be great if like a board wipe would hit, but instead of having a card that would be great if a board wipe is played, I'd rather just have a card that would prevent my board from getting wiped from a board wipe. And I'm not even playing those, and maybe that's bad, maybe I should be running those, but I'd rather maybe just have some good card draw that can keep my hand full so that if a board wipe does happen, I can just get threats back out on the board. These are all the one-off draw effects. Rishkar, Soul's Majesty, both draw cards equal to the power of the greatest power among creatures you control, which is fantastic. Rishkar can then also cast something that costs 5 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost afterwards. So yeah, these cards both, if you have your commander out without any Anthem effects, that's 5 or 6 mana to draw 6 cards. That is such a great rate. And if you do have Anthem effects or like a pump effect, because something like a Xenagos effect is until end of turn, you could draw 11, 12, 13, 14 cards with these cards, which is fantastic. Shamanic Revelation draws a card for each creature you control, and then because of the Pump and Anthem effects, you're definitely going to have creatures with power 4 or greater, helping you refill your hand, and then also refill your life total, because you're going to be attacking so much, people are going to be cracking back at you. And then I like Harmonize. I know a lot of people don't like Harmonize because it's a sorcery, and it's just 4 mana, draw 3 cards, but that card is often just what you need, because this deck has enough ramp that I'm fine with a card like Harmonize being able to hit my land drops and get me some more threats into my hand, that because of all the ramp I can put onto the battlefield and get swinging again. These are the enchantment-based card draw effects. Garruk's Uprising, giving trample, again, fantastic. And also, if you control a creature with 4 or greater, like your commander, as it enters, you draw a card. And then whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield, you draw a card. I love Garruk's Uprising. It's one of my favorite cards of all time. It's just such a good card in a green deck. It's so strong. And then Elemental Bond is like Garruk's Uprising. Whenever a creature power 3 or greater enters the battlefield, you draw a card. So again, all these creatures, especially with like all the Anthem effects, with a couple of Anthem effects I have in the deck, and with the fact that I'm running critical mass of creatures, Elemental Bond, Garruk's Uprising, going to draw you cards, and then they're just great for that reason. And then both Courts, putting Monarch on the board, love Monarch, getting you that draw on your end step, but also Court of Bounty. During your upkeep, you can put a land onto the battlefield, but if you're the Monarch, you can put a land or a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, so helping you cheat out some creatures that way. Works great with some of the haste enablers I have in the deck. These cards are fantastic. And then the 2 knights that draw you cards, I showed you them earlier. Again, they're both fantastic. Cavalier of Flame is ridiculous. So the ramp is pretty bog standard. It's green-red, so you do get to run some other ramp cards that I really enjoy, besides just the land cards. So yeah, I'll go through them right quickly. Goblin Anarchomancer being my favorite ramp card in all of Magic. Naya, my favorite color combination. And this is often just one of the strongest cards in the deck, because after you play it, your Rampant Growth costs 1 mana. Your commander costs 1 less. Everything costs 1. It's so good. Your Beast Within costs 2 mana. It's so good. This thing makes Domri cost 2 mana. Like, Goblin Anarchomancer, it usually doesn't get killed. I mean, like, whenever I've played Goblin Anarchomancer, it gets taken out by a board wipe. People don't play spot removal for it, and they should, because it enables so much shenanigans. Even the card shenanigans. It makes the card shenanigans cost 1 less. Like, oh my god, this card's so good. And again, Soul Ring, card's busted. And again, I showed Domri earlier. Great. Also, it's like Rhythm of the Wild, where the creature spells you cast this turn can't be countered. That's also just a great effect. These cards put lands from your hand, or they don't search to put lands onto the battlefield, so you do have a chance of whiffing, but at the same time, they both have synergies in other ways, or effects in other ways that makes them still strong. And these are all the 2 mana ramp effects that I run in basically every green deck. Into the North, you run Snow Basics as well, because if you have in a 3-color deck, you'll have 3 Snow duels in the deck, so you don't need to run Snow Basics if you don't want to. But in a 2-color deck or a monocolor deck, you will need to run Snow Basics, because this can only find snow lands. But besides that, the card is phenomenal. And then, yeah, 3 visits, Nature Lore, putting untapped forests onto the battlefield. It's great. Like, all these cards are just amazing. These are all the 4-mana ramp and 3-mana ramp cards. Cultivate Kanama's Reach, classics. Sky Shroud and Ranger's Path, also phenomenal cards. And I love Sky Shroud and Ranger's Path because they find forests. They don't find basics. You can find basics with them if you want, but they find non-basics if you need. So it helps with mana fixing, which is better in higher colored combination decks. But still, here you can find your red-green duels very efficiently. So for the removal, I'm so excited to show you these 2 removal cards that I just found recently, refound, I guess, because they're so strong. They're so strong, and I can't believe I didn't see them until now. I can't believe people aren't on EDH Rec. At least I haven't seen them very often on EDH Rec. And if I have, I don't know. I don't know how I missed these. These cards are phenomenal. Those 2 cards being Atrax's Fall and Hull Breach. So these are the 4 specifically like artifact and enchantment removers. Also Sprouting Renewal. You can make a 2/2 Knight with it, and it has Convoke. Card's awesome. But Atrax's Fall can destroy an artifact, an enchantment, a battle, or a creature with flying. That's 4 different options to destroy something. 3 of which super relevant, 1 of which occasionally relevant. Usually, like, there are effects that destroy an enchantment or a creature with flying that costs 2 or 3 mana, or destroy an artifact or enchantment or creature with flying that costs 3 mana. This is 2 mana for 4 different targets. That is so good. That card is amazing. I'm running this in all of my green decks now. It and Return to Nature are going in all of my green decks now because, holy crap, they are so efficient and they're so good at just being removal. It's awesome. And then Hull Breach, again, is fantastic. So Hull Breach has a lot of really interesting caveats to it. So it's 2 mana destroy an artifact, or 2 mana destroy an enchantment, or 2 mana destroy an artifact and an enchantment. The reason that's really good is because if you go to, it's 2 mana to remove 2 things, which is already ridiculous. But you also have, it does have one downside, which is that if you go to destroy an artifact and an enchantment with that other ability, and someone, say, sacrifices or removes like one of them some way, the spell will fizzle and it won't hit both targets. But even if you do that, you still get one of the 2 targets you were aiming for. And because of this, you don't want to target the same person for artifact and enchantment, because they're more likely to going to want to spend a resource or something to remove themselves their artifact or enchantment, so that they don't get 2 for 1 that way. So what you want to do is you want to pick 2 different players. That way they both won't get rid of their thing, because if they do, that's just pure upside for their opponent. So you're basically guaranteed to hit 2 different targets with it. In a commander game, this card is awesome. And the politicking here you can do with it's great. I can destroy 2 things. What things should we destroy? And say someone is the blue player, you're like, blue player, listen, I need to blow up this thing you have, and you probably have a counter spell, or I know you have a counter spell. But if you don't counter it, I'll let you choose the second target from one of these 2 players. You still get that 2 for 1. Sure, someone else gets to pick that other thing, but it still goes through. Like, this card is so good. I'm so happy I refound this card, and it's going in all of my decks with red and green that it makes sense to go into, because holy crap, it is such a good removal piece. So while you won't want to minus Domri Raid because their static ability and their +1 are very strong, these fight spells are still very good in a deck like this. So Blizzard Brawl, because of all the snow lands, you'll be able to give your creature indestructible until the end of turn. Joust, it's a knight deck. I had to put in a card called Joust because it gives +2/+1 until the end of turn if it's a knight for the fight. And then Primal Might gives +X/+X. And then Tail Swipe, if you activate it during your main phase or cast it during your main phase, your creature gets +1/+1 till the end of turn. All of these cards are fantastic, really good fight cards, and with your commander being a 6/5, very good for removing stuff using fight spells. And then finally, the indiscriminate removal pieces, Beast Within and Chaos Warp. They can hit anything. They both hit a permanent. Beast Within makes a 3/3. Chaos Warp usually shuffles out something worse than the thing you shuffled away. I really don't like Chaos Warp, but I can't deny how strong it is in certain situations. And especially decks that are heavier on the instants and sorcery side, usually a lot of their permanents support that kind of base, and you're less likely to hit a Crater Hoof or a Jin Gitaxias off it. So because of that, I'm fine with Chaos Warp in some instances. I have been burned by it. Now for the lands. The land's pretty bog standard, except for one spicy land I put in the deck because red-green, combat focus, you gotta have this land in there. That spicy land being Kessig Wolfrun. Kessig Wolfrun, X, red-green, target creature gets +X/+O and trample until the end of turn. That's great. Mana sink if you need it. You have you can activate an instant speed, so your creature actually is unblocked or is blocked. You can make sure you get some of that damage through or something like that. Kessig Wolfrun's great. I think this card's awesome. It does, and also produces a colorless, so it still also produces mana. This card's fantastic. The other 4 lands I have on the side here, Highland Forest just represents all the snow lands in the deck. Mossfire Valley, I love the Signet lands, and they don't have the cycle completed. I'm pretty sure they don't have any of the enemy Signet lands, so they need to make them because they're so good. I love the Signet lands. And then Terrain Generator, this deck is running quite a few basics. so being able to put out more basics with turn generator is great. And then Spire Garden is a battle bond land, and please, Wizards, put the battle bond lands in the precons, the commander precons. We would all love you guys so much. You'd gain so many like social points with the Magic community if you put the battle bond lands in the precons. So I don't have a lot of maybes for this deck. This deck came together very fast. I was surprised at how quickly and how few cards I threw together immediately. Like, normally if I'm throwing a deck together, I'll get like 140 cards. When I initially went through EDHREC and Scryfall, looking up certain terms and finding certain cards and stuff, like, I think I ended up with like 115. And then as I trimmed it, I'm like, yeah, I don't want this card. Yeah, I don't want this card. And so I only had like 7 cards that I really had a tough time cutting. But then when I actually went through cutting, only 5 of them I really thought were worth keeping in the maybe category, or the one card represented multiple maybes for that. So I'll go through those cards now. So with a card like Lizard Blades, it kind of represents how I could have went for a more commander damage focused thing, trying to kill with that, but I decided against that because I've already done that a couple times, and I think a tribal deck, Tribal Knights, was just going to be more interesting, and I think it was. Return of the Wild Speaker. The reason I put in something like Soul's Majesty versus Return of the Wild Speaker is because your commander's a human, and Soul's Majesty is just going to trigger more often for a higher number because it can proc off your commander. Gaia's Anthem, it's the stereotypical Anthem. The white has the same version of this in multiple different flavors. 3 mana +1/+1, or 3 mana +1/+1 plus a side effect. I wanted other effects like Rising of the Day, the haste something, but only giving the +1 to your legendary creatures, because I just felt like that would be more impactful in the long run, and just generic anthems maybe would be less impactful because they don't have as many like side upsides. Blasphemous Act, again, you need creatures, and I feel Blasphemous Act would do more harm than good in a deck like this. And then Gigantosaurus, 1, I love its flavor text, phenomenal. And 2, it kind of represents, you could have also went for a no abilities deck, just like the previous deck I made, the Jasmine Boreal deck. Again, Jerrard Closed Fist is a 6/5 with no abilities, so you could have done that strategy. And cards like Ruxa are also in the no ability category that's just a green card. So you could have done that, but again, I wanted to do Night Tribal because I wasn't sure what Knights were out there, and I'm really happy with how the deck came together. So let me know what you think of the deck. I'm really happy with it. It's a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Jerrard being a 6 mana 6/5, not great, but found some cool, interesting ways to use that. Giving it +1, again, getting it to 7, easier to get kill with commander damage because it already has a high base power. Works well with cards like Rishkar's Expertise and Soul's Majesty. Giving it trample with cards like Garruk's Uprising, draws you a card, and then easier to get through. Like, he's bad. He's very bad. He's atrocious, and there's no reason you would run it over any other 6 mana green-red creature that hits hard. Like, Rurikthar is just better than this in every possible conceivable way. And so, like, it is just a bad card, but I'm surprised at what I was able to do with it. These are all my socials. I post on Twitter when these videos go live. I'm going to start posting on TikTok and Reddit, I promise. And then Architect and Moxfield are where all of these deck lists live. So thanks for watching, and as always, get building, splainers. Alright, that is so